All right, let's get right into it. There's a huge question looming over the Canadian economy for 2025, a real game changer. We're talking about a what-if scenario that could totally flip the script on how every single one of us deals with our money. I mean, really think about that. What if we just opened the floodgates? Imagine a world where the biggest, most powerful American banks could come north and compete on the exact same turf with the exact same rules as our Canadian banks. This isn't just a fun thought experiment. There are literally billions of dollars at stake. So, first up, in this corner, let's meet our reigning champs, the Canadian banking system. It's an absolute fortress, right? It's known around the world for being super stable, wildly profitable, and, well, pretty much dominated by a handful of giant players. And this chart just says it all. Look at that. When we say dominated, we mean it. The big six Canadian banks control a whopping 93% of the entire market here at home. That's not just a lead, that is total control. Everybody else is just fighting over the tiny little slice that's left. And these champions, they are massive. You know their names: RBC, TD, Scotiabank, BMO, CIBC, and National Bank. Together, they are sitting on over $7.2 trillion in assets. It's this incredible scale that let them just cruise right through the 2008 financial crisis, when other banks around the world were collapsing. No bailouts needed here. And you know, they haven't just been sitting back and enjoying the view. Nope, they've been making moves. RBC buying up HSBC Canada, National Bank snapping up Canadian Western Bank. It's almost like they're strategically setting up their defenses, getting the battlefield ready for a possible invasion. But what kind of challenger are we talking about here? Well, this is where it gets interesting. Enter the American Titans. And folks, these aren't just banks. They are global financial empires with a scale and a competitive firepower that is almost hard to wrap your head around. And this slide right here perfectly illustrates the insane size difference. On the left, you've got Canada's top dog, RBC, with a very impressive $2.2 trillion in assets. But then you look to the right, JPMorgan Chase, America's number one, is sitting on $4.1 trillion. It's nearly double the size. It's not even in the same league. Now, brace yourself for this next number. $17 billion. You know what that is? That's what JPMorgan Chase spends on technology every single year, just on tech. Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. The tech budgets of just a few of the top U.S. banks are bigger than all the money the entire Canadian banking industry makes in a year. This isn't just a gap in resources, my friends. It's a canyon. It's a whole different universe of financial power. And it's not just about the cash. See, while Canada has its cozy Big Six, the U.S. market is a total brawl. We're talking over 4,000 banks all fighting tooth and nail for customers. That kind of hyper-competitive pressure forges a totally different culture, one that's all about being ruthlessly efficient and innovating constantly just to survive. So if this fight were to actually happen, how would it all play out? Let's do the tale of the tape. Let's break down the strengths and weaknesses of each side, like a pre-fight analysis before the opening bell. So, on one side, you've got the Canadian banks with that crucial home field advantage. We're talking decades of brand trust. Your parents and grandparents banked with them. They have deep relationships with pretty much every Canadian, and they know the local rules inside and out. But on the other side, the U.S. banks bring that overwhelming scale, that mind-blowing tech, and a battle-hardened culture that just doesn't quit. So, what happens when this unstoppable force from the south meets the immovable object up north? Well, the analysis boils it down to three possible ways this whole showdown could end. So, scenario one, the most likely, is a hard-fought draw. The Canadian banks lose a big chunk of the market, but they survive. The best case scenario for them, the bull case. They manage to defend their turf. And the worst case, the bear case. A total knockout blow, where U.S. banks take over and maybe even buy one of our big banks. Okay, let's zoom in on that most likely outcome, the hard-fought draw. In this future, Canadian bank profits would take a serious hit. But, and this is a big but, for you, for the average Canadian, it could mean a collective savings of $10 to $14 billion every single year. And that really brings us to the million-dollar question, or in this case, the billion-dollar question. What does all this high-level Bay Street versus Wall Street talk actually mean for your wallet, for your job, and for the way you bank every day? For us as consumers, the potential upside is just huge.
We're talking lower fees, way better credit card rewards, cheaper mortgages, and a ton more innovation. But there are some serious trade-offs to think about. The economy could see job losses in the finance sector, our pension funds that rely on bank stocks could suffer, and we might lose what many see as our national champions.
This chart really just lays out the central dilemma perfectly. That huge green bar, that's a massive potential win for every single one of us with a bank account. But it's weighed against the red bar, the potential cost to Canadian jobs and the broader economy. It's a classic head versus heart problem.
So, in the end, it really all boils down to this one question. What do we value more? Do we want better products and lower prices, even if it means weakening our iconic Canadian banks? Or do we want to protect those national champions, even if it costs us a bit more out of our own pockets? What's the right price for your bank account?